He looks like he's our audience. He's just looking up at it.
We're like giving a whole presentation.
I'm gonna get my phone out and I'll hold it on him and be like, Baxter Cam. Hi, Baxter.
POV.
What's up, guys?
Welcome to Safe Haven Podcast, episode 5. Tyler Fender here. He's my husband. He is going to be joining us as we talk about all things relationship. We're going to talk about our relationship, singleness, and just what to expect, how we should act in a relationship, and all that good stuff, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good.
I'm excited. So, to start off, we're going to talk about Tyler and just introduce him to y'all. He's going to talk about what he does, his testimony, so let's get into it.
I'm Tyler Fender. I am 20 years old. I'm Melissa's husband, and I am a worship pastor and musician, and wear many hats at church, do a lot of sound stuff, edit videos, creative side of things. I'm really involved in that, which is my passion, so it's really cool to be able to do that. And growing up, I always grew up in church and involved at church. My parents are pastors, my grandparents are pastors, and every time the doors were open, obviously we were there. Wednesdays, Sundays, all the special events. So I was always at church, missed all of my sporting games that were on Sundays for church, missed practices on Wednesdays that were for church. That's just what we did. And that was instilled in me from a very young age. And looking back, I am very thankful for it now. In the moment, I was probably just frustrated with my parents. But looking back, I'm truly grateful they made the decision that nothing else is more important than God's house, because that's resonated with me all these years later, and that's what I want to do with our kids and just teach them the values of going to church every week. And I'm not saying don't take a vacation or whatever, but that God's house is, especially when you're young, is one of the most important places that you can be at. So I grew up in church. When I was younger, I had a very good viewpoint of church, but as I started to get older, 14, 15, I started to not like it as much, and I just felt like all the friends I had at church and everyone that would come up and talk to me only was friends with me and talking to me because of who my parents were and who I was, and I just didn't really like that, because I'm a very real person. Even at 13, 14, 15, I was just like, I don't want to be friends with them because they're only friends with me for that reason or this reason or because of who my family is. And looking back, was it 100% that way? Not at all. But that's how I felt, and I didn't like it. So 16 years old, I got a car, started hanging out with people that didn't go to church. Would go to the gym with them, would go out to eat with them, and without even realizing it, I had slowly started to become like them. I got really good at flipping the switch on and off. I could be fooling everyone at church on Sunday and Wednesdays, and then right after those services, hang out with my friends and be a polar opposite, completely different person. I would like to say that I changed and distanced myself from those types of people, but I didn't, and it doesn't make it okay, it doesn't make it right, it doesn't give me an excuse, but I did all this without really catching it or paying attention that these are the decisions I was making and these were the outcomes. I didn't grasp that at the time. And so at first, the friends I was hanging out with, they were just cussing, not a big deal to me. And then they started drinking, and I was like, not a big deal. And then they started smoking, and it just very quickly turned into a crazy life that I didn't know really how to navigate it, and I didn't want to tell my parents about it. I didn't have any church people because I had distanced myself from the church. I didn't have any people to be like, hey, what should I do in this situation? And I didn't want to lose my friends that I had made outside of church, and so I had one foot in the church and one foot in the world, and it was very draining to have to remember, with these friends I can talk this way, with these friends I don't have to censor myself, I can say whatever I want, I can do whatever I want. And living a double life will never get you anywhere good. It's only going to bring you pain. You're going to be miserable. You might have fun for a season, but when it really sets in and you really get a reality check, you're going to feel very overwhelmed. So 17 years old, hanging out with the wrong people. I know it sounds cliche, but that is the truth. and my parents had found out about some of the stuff I was doing, people I was hanging out with, decisions I was making, and I didn't tell them. They had just found out from different avenues, and they sat me down one night when I came home, and we talked, and I got in trouble. But it was the first time I felt like I could truly share everything and share how I felt, and share that I don't want to be friends with this person from church because they're only friends with me because of who you guys are and whose son I am. And so I shared everything with them. These are the decisions I've been making. This is why I'm making them. I know it doesn't justify them, but I got to get out of this spot because I don't want to be here anymore. And I never opened up to them before. Like, they checked on me all the time. They asked me how things were. They were great parents. They are great parents, and they would always check on me, but I just never, I'm a private person, so I never could really tell them, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what I feel like. And that's no one's fault but my own. I wish I would have spoken up sooner and got my life turned around at 15 or 16 instead of 17 when everything was falling down around me and it was a massive mess. But I told them, like, I just feel like I can't make friends here. I feel like I can't make friends, where I'm at, and I don't want to leave because it's like, it's who I am. I've been in this church ever since I was a baby. And they were like, well, first of all, you're grounded. And I was like, okay, cool. But like, I expected that. But they're like, when you get ungrounded, we want you to start playing at other churches and going to the Sunday night college services and going to the stuff that's on off days from our services. And I was like, okay, cool. So a few months later, and that's the key, a few months later, you can't go from living in the world and then serving God on a platform with a guitar in your hand or serving in all these ministries when you were just out doing all these crazy things.
Yeah.
That's the key point of this story. I don't want anyone to get it twisted or misinterpret what I'm saying. You can't go from living for the world and then serve instantly. You can live for God instantly. You can flip a switch and say, God, I'm going to live for you. I'm done with the old ways. But you can't go from living for the world for so long and instantly step into serving in ministry. So there has to be a season of purification and repentance. So there was a few months that I built up my relationship with Christ and actually became a follower of Him, not a follower of my parents that were following Him. Because I feel like that's, especially growing up in church, pastor's kid, I was guilty of that for the first 17 years of my life. I pray that every young person watching this even anyone watching this, make sure you have a relationship with God for yourself.
Yes. You
can pull from other people and get inspired from other people's faith and their walk with God, but make sure you're not following someone that's following God. Make sure you are truly by yourself on His path for your life. But yeah, there's a season of purification and repentance. And so after I felt like I was ready and my parents felt like I was ready to step out and do what they had talked about doing, I hit up a guy. I was like, hey, I'd love to come audition for your worship team on Sunday nights. I can't on Sunday mornings because I have service at my home church, but I'd love to, play for the middle school, high school, and for the college nights. He was like, okay, cool. So I went that week, had an audition, and he was like, do you want to come play for 2 weeks for worship? And I was like, that'd be awesome. So I go after my service at my home church and go to play, and I ended up meeting Alyssa there that day. So yeah.
I like how you said you can't hop from living from the world to being in ministry, and that's so true. And I feel like a lot of people that are stuck in that like lukewarm do that still, and so it is so true. Like, you need to repent, you need to actually come to God and have that full 180 and live in that. It can't be a hop back and forth. That just stood out to me, and I like that. If you watched the first episode, it was talking about my testimony, and so within that, where I went to a different church, that's where I met Tyler. So you want to give your perspective on how we met?
Well, yeah, and I wasn't gonna say it. I wasn't gonna not because it's bad or anything, but I wasn't gonna go into this because I didn't want to take a bunch of time. I got an invite to go play at a church, and it was her church that she was going to. And so I show up for an audition in the week, and they're like, yeah, we'd love for you to play. And so I come 2 Sundays later, and I ended up meeting Alyssa and one of her friends, and they just said, hi to me. But when I saw her, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. And I was like, I want to go on a date with her. And 3 or 4 weeks later, I think I had told her like, hey, I like you a lot. Would you go on a date? And
That's what you told me?
I don't really remember.
No, guys. He told me at church. At church. I could pull you if I wanted to. Who says that? So I was like,
Me.
no. I knew everybody in the church that I used to go to. Like, it was just a thing that, like, any person that was, like, college or around my age, get to know them, make them feel welcome. That's what I did. So when I met him, that was, like, instant to be like, hey, what's up? Like, get to know him and talk. But it wasn't anything like that in my book or in my eyes or ever. And then he pulls that out of nowhere, and I was like, this kid's crazy, because, like, who says that? And then from there, our friends, like, our friend group started hanging out.
This is like the detail version.
Yes,
Okay.
we gotta give them the details.
Okay. I didn't know.
So we were hanging out, and then he started liking me. But at the time, I
liked her from the first moment I saw her. She just
No.
didn't want to accept it.
No. So I was very taken back by, like, getting into relationships and stuff. Like, I did not want to do that unless I knew it was from God. I was super about that because I didn't want to end up 10 steps back from where I had just gone. So it was important that I, like, took baby steps in every little thing. So I, like, played hard to get and, like, just had to make sure, you know?
She said she wanted to be from God, but little does she know I'm heaven sent. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay, anyways.
Don't cut that out. Keep that in.
So from there, and us ended up dating. We ended up getting married very quickly. I was 19 and he was 18. And I mean, he comes from, like, a background of his parents getting married young. Your mom was 17 and had to get papers signed to get married. Like, that's crazy. And your dad was 21.
20 or 21.
And then your grandparents were also young.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, he came from that aspect and I came from a completely different side. Like, they were very blown away by, like, you're getting married, like, you're leaving the house. It was a huge thing. And a lot of people ask me about, like, getting married young and stuff, and I can't recommend it to anybody because every relationship is different.
Dang, it's been that bad?
No, for us it works, but, like, I don't know your relationship, and like, it has to be from God because you won't be able to make it through without God.
It takes two special types of people, and I'm not saying we're better than anyone that's watching or listening to this, but it takes two people who can sacrifice their wants for the other person, because it's give and take on both ends. And I think, not to, like, jump the gun on what we're going to talk about the rest of this episode, but, like, I want it my way all the times, 100% of the time, in every aspect of life. And the first month was, well, the honeymoon was great. The first month when we got back home, it was like figuring that out, because that doesn't work. It can't be 100% one way, my way, or 100% her way. It's give and take and compromise. And so the first month, I think we really got that down. And I mean, ever since then, still building on that and getting it down. But if you're the type of person that knows you're not going to sacrifice and compromise, or your partner that you're engaged to or thinking about getting married to is not like that, you gotta either get like that or figure something out, because it won't work.
Right. There is constant sacrifice in
every day
relationship.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, like, where you come from and, like, your background and your family, like, you want to stick to that, but even that is like, y'all aren't them, they aren't you know what I mean? So you have to learn a new way that builds and works for y'all. So that's good, but we're gonna get more into that. But because
I don't want to go too soon.
We got married so quick and everything, I think a huge question is always like, how did you know? So what would your answer be to that question?
So I'm gonna look it up while I'm talking, if that's all right.
Yeah.
So I knew very quickly, because I feel like, not to get into it too deep, but I feel like I'm a very misunderstood person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm a very emotional person, not like sitting in the corner crying, but like I go hard at everything I do. I want to be the best at everything I do. I want my best work on everything I do, even if it's a simple task. I want to do it to the best of my ability, and I just take pride at work. I take pride in my music. I know I wanted to be the best at everything I do, but I'm a very misunderstood person in that aspect, because people might label that as cocky or arrogant or even rude, like, because I'm a hardcore, I want everything done right. I hold everyone to the level that I hold myself to, which is a very high level. And so some people just aren't used to that. It comes off at first glance kind of weird. So she was the first person that understood me. I don't know if she really did understand me, but she was the first person that when I talked about dreams and aspirations that I have to accomplish in my life, that didn't call me crazy besides my family. All this stuff I would tell people and girls I would date and go on dates with, they looked at me like I was, God bless them though. But they would look at me like I was crazy. And that told me, number one, their faith isn't anywhere near mine. And I'm not saying it had to be all the way up where mine was, but it needs to be a similar level.
Absolutely.
And so she was one of the first people that didn't look at me crazy when I told her what I want to do with my life and where I want to be at in 10 years and 15 years and 20 years. And then this was the first time I had ever done this, but the first date, well, she didn't think it was a date.
It wasn't.
I brought her flowers and Chick-fil-A after work, and I thought it was a date. But
we were just supposed to be hanging out as friends. Like, I literally specified as friends, and then he comes with flowers and candy.
Her friend told me to, that it was a good idea. Probably shouldn't have listened. But the first date, like, the first time we hung out, I had never done this with anyone, but I was like, I knew at this point in my life I was done dating people just to date people. I was like, all right, I'm on fire for God. I'm sold out to God. I've cleaned up the way I've walked, cleaned up the way I've talked, cleaned up my life, and I'm, serving Him in everything that I do. I don't want to just date someone to date them, because it's a waste of my time, it's a waste of my money, it's a waste of the other person's effort, time, money, all that. So I knew that I wanted this to be serious. So from the jump, on the first time we hung out, I was like, how many kids do you want? Because if she would have said a crazy number or none, that would have been a deal breaker for me. And I don't want to waste her time or my time or, money, whatever, and date for 6 months and then pop that question and we break up. Like, it's kind of just pointless. So I asked all my non-negotiables from the jump, how many kids do you want? I want 2, and then if they're both girls or both boys, I want to try for a 3rd. She said the exact same thing. I said, what do you want to do with your life? She wants to be a teacher. It resonates with me. I was like, well, that would be a great fit for what I want to do with my life. So everything, all my non-negotiables, I won't get into all of them, but everything that I asked, her answer was something that resonated and I wanted for the rest of my life and wanted in a wife. So I'm not saying that's the moment I knew, but that was looking good. And then when I finally made my decision, I prayed about it and I was like, God, is this the right decision? If it's not, take this thing sideways in the next week before I'm about to buy this ring and go ask her parents and then ask her. And it was like a great week. Everything went great with us. We went on dates every night. It was awesome. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna do this. I told my parents, and then the next night I went to go ask her parents. And this is where I'm gonna look this up. All right, so I was driving to her parents' house to ask for her hand in marriage, and her family's Hispanic. I'm obviously not. I am 100% white, and so I knew there would be probably a little bit of resistance and kickback with her, family, which rightfully so. I mean, we had been dating.
A culture shock,
Yeah, we had been dating for how many months? 6 months, maybe?
Yeah.
They had only known me out of that 6 months for 4.5 of them. And
my dad literally told him, like, I won't start talking to him till he sticks around for 6 months. And then at 6 months.
On the 6 month to the, I didn't do, Louis, if you're watching this, I didn't do that on purpose, but 6 months to the T, like exactly the day of 6 months is the day I ended up asking, which I didn't even know that till afterwards. But on the way over there, I was listening to worship music and I was praying, and a story popped in my head. It's Judges 6:36 through 40. So Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, I shall put a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece only and dry on the ground, I know you will save Israel by my hand. And then verse 38, it says, it is so. When he arose early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece together. He wrung the dew out of the fleece, a bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, do not be angry with me, but let me speak just once more. Let me test, I pray, just once more with the fleece. Let it now be dry on only the fleece, but all on the ground let there be dew. This story had popped in my head, and I kind of knew at the time the Sunday school version of it, where Gideon fleeced God. The first prayer he prayed was, if you will save Israel by my hand, let the fleece be wet and the ground be dry. And then the next morning it was so, and it was exactly how I prayed it, but he wanted one more sign that God would do what he said he would do. And so he wanted the fleece to be dry, but the ground to be wet the next morning. He woke up and it was the same way he prayed for it to be. So I knew the simple version back then, but that's actually the verse in the Bible and the reference. But 10 minutes from our house, that story popped in my head, and I didn't want to fleece God because I was like, I don't know if this is right to do. Like, I don't want to test God. Like, I know, I prayed, if this is supposed to be, let this be a great week, let everything go right, or give me a sign and make you go sideways if it's not. And that had happened. Everything was great, but I just needed one more confirmation because it's a scary thing. I was like, I love this girl. She's a great fit. Like, my parents love her. I think this will be great, but like, I only want to get married one time. Like, I don't want to get a divorce. I don't want to screw up my life and screw up her life. I want to make sure this is the woman you sent for me, and this is a part of the plan for my life that you have for me. So I was praying, and I said, God, I think her parents are going to flip out and say no, or say wait, or whatever, because they had, a lot of good reasons to. So I said, God, if this is from you, let them hear me out and let her dad not kill me. No, but seriously, let them hear me out. Let her dad see where I'm coming from, and we can have a conversation about it and it go good, and they accept me and see where I'm coming from. So I go over, I don't get nervous. I'm not scared of anything in the world. I have the most confidence, I think, out of anyone you would ever meet. But I was nervous. That's the most nervous I've ever been in my life. My hands were sweaty. I was shaking. I can't even describe it. Physically, I was nauseous. It was really weird. I never felt like that in my life ever. And knocking on the door, they have a Ring camera. They probably have the video. I was hesitant to knock. I was like, I'm just gonna turn around and go home. I felt bizarre, to even ever feel scared like that. So I ended up knocking on the door, and I had texted her mom, so they knew I wanted to come meet with them. But she was at work. I knocked on the door, and they answered, and they were like, we can sit at the kitchen table. So we sat at her parents' kitchen table, and I just told them from the jump, I'm asking for your hand in marriage with Alyssa. I don't know what to say, so if you have any questions, I'll give you my best answer, because I didn't prepare a speech or anything. So I knew they'd have a lot of questions, so they asked me a ton of questions, how are you going to provide for her? Right. What's your plan? All the stuff that they needed to ask. So we sat for about an hour and a half and we talked, and they said yes. So that's how I knew it was from God, 100%, because
confirmation.
It went really well, and there was never a crossword or we were just talking. It was very calm. They asked me questions. I came up with good answers, and I think that was from God, because I didn't know what to say. I was really, really timid and afraid that day. So
yeah,
that's how I knew.
I think it's important to pray about the relationship that you might be stepping in, even friendships that you might get into, because like you said earlier, it has such a big meaning on your life. You are who you date, you are who you are around. And even if you're not a person that gets easily influenced, you're gonna start acting what you're seeing
without even knowing it. Because that's what happened to me. I was like, I'll never be like that person, and then a year later I was everything I said I would have never become.
Exactly. So I think it's so important that you ask God, and you don't step into anything too soon until you know that that's for sure. And that's what I did previous to Tyler was like I was so hesitant to like get into a relationship because I was like, I just want to make sure I'm doing this correctly because I just got right with God. I'm not trying to go back or have a person fill God's spot because it's so baby faith that I don't know how to maintain God and another person at once. So I think that's super important. Pray about the relationships that you're getting into. But for me, how I knew was exactly that, just praying and constant confirmation from God and just knowing that I also had a 5 non-negotiable list that I would not tell anybody at the time because I didn't want anyone trying to, like, they already know it, so they're gonna try to be that, but I think it's really important to make a non-negotiable list. Like, don't just think about them, like, genuinely write them down. And I'm not talking about, like, oh, he has to be taller than me and he has to be, like, brown hair.
No, because
like,
that's
not
like
that.
Funny story. You're Puerto Rican, but you look kind of pale. I never wanted to date a pale girl or a white girl. Like, that's just not my preference of who I thought I would end up with. And she doesn't like, or you do now, me, but before me, she didn't want to get with a white guy. So it's like, don't worry about the silly stuff. Like, because at the end of the day, you might think that's a serious thing. When you fall in love with someone, like, for real, you won't care about, oh, well, I didn't want him to be this race, or I didn't want her to have this color hair. That's just, it's like silly stuff at the end of the day. Make sure it's like a serious
so
thing.
Non-negotiable is like, I mean, down to like they have to have a good relationship with God. They have to like whatever fits your description of, I need this in a husband and this has to be it. I'm not bending it. Like, he has to be at this level or I will not get in a relationship with him, type of thing. Like, hold people to that standard and you will find good. You don't have to lower yourself down to something that you're not.
And if they don't meet it,
another one will.
Give them the boot respectfully.
Someone else will.
Like, I should never be her project, and she should never be my project. Obviously, we can strengthen each other and lift each other up, and like, obviously, when things go wrong, or with our health, or with our families, I mean, whatever, point each other to God and pray over each other. But like, her problems should not make me feel like she's a project to me, and vice versa. My stuff that I go through and that I battle, she should be able to fight it with me, but she shouldn't have to baby me in my faith or in my walk with Christ. That's just, if they're like that, I don't want to say don't give them the time, but distance yourself. And if you're supposed to be, it'll come together by God's hand in a year or 5 years. I don't know what the situation is, but like, if you're in a relationship where y'all are projects for each other,
absolutely,
just cut ties, save some time, save some money, get in a good headspace, get in the Bible.
Heartbreak is easier than divorce. And I think it's very important for you to know the role that you play in your relationship. Don't be that boy's mom, and vice versa. Like, you don't need to baby that girl. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's such a difference from like providing and then like raising up. And so know who you're with, know who you are, is super important and crucial, but also like being equally yoked. I know people that, I want someone that goes to church, but like, you don't even go to church. Or, like, you want something that you're not even doing, or you want like that person because they're really good in their faith, so like you can bite off of them or like build off of them, but that's not gonna get you anywhere, and that's gonna be you pulling them down. So like, you have to be equally yoked. And I know there's a lot of people that think that they can fix people, and that's not your job. When it comes to a relationship, that's not your job. Like, especially being a Christian, we are called to bring people to Jesus, but that doesn't mean that you have to like date them to get them to Jesus. You know what I mean? Because I think that's a huge thing. Like, oh, I like this guy, but like, he doesn't come to church. And then it's like, oh, he's coming to church and like making a little bit of effort, but then he's doing it for you and it's not genuine.
Well, the only person that can truly change someone is God. And none of us are him. So like, give it to God. But like, if you're waiting on someone to get their relationship with Christ better, don't hop in a relationship with them or date them. Like, give it to God, bring them to church with you, hang out in a group as friends. Like, whatever you want to do, but don't hop into a relationship with someone that it's still building their walk up to what it needs to be. I guess
Right.
would be what I have to say on that.
Yeah. 2 Corinthians 6:14. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers, for what do righteous and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? There's a song that that I made him listen to when we first got together, and it's called Soul Ties. And it's like,
Well, no, Jaden, my sister, knew it was her favorite song at the time, so she was like, play this song for Alyssa the next time y'all hang out. She's like, she'll love you after that. I was like, all right,
Whatever.
cool. So I showed her, and she's like, didn't Jaden show you this? Like, dang it.
Yeah, I already knew.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's such a good song though, because it talks about like relationship and like soul ties and what happens when you're not following God's word and or in a God-centered relationship. And one thing that it says is, for ladies, it's like, how is it him that you're supposed to feed and he's supposed to be the head? And I love that because it's true. Like, if we get with someone that is not as equally yoked as us, and we're having to feed him the faith, and we're having to babysit him into like, okay, come to church, okay, read your word, did you get in your word? You know what I mean? Like, it's not an aspect of accountability. It's more of like raising him up. Then how is he supposed to lead you? And how is he supposed to be the person that is going to become your husband, that's going to be your provider? Because you shouldn't be in that relationship just to grow him and then you're left empty, and you shouldn't be in a relationship for nothing. All relationships that you get in should have purpose and an end goal. So if you're in a relationship, think about what is that purpose. Because like for us, we knew going in, I'm not here to waste time. I'm here to find a husband. I'm here to find a wife, you know? Like, our end goal was marriage, and from there, like, now it's like having kids and a family and maintaining everything. But in a relationship, you shouldn't step into just for fun or for free time, or like just like having someone to hang out with. It's a waste of time. Like, get into what you're gonna do with purpose. So what would your advice be to Christian single men out there, like in pursuing a wife?
I mean, there's a few, but this is going to sound weird coming from someone that got married at 18, but like, if she wasn't the one and God ended up showing me like, hey, this is not what you're supposed to be doing, and everything went sideways, I wouldn't have just went and tried to find another relationship or someone to be my wife right after. Like, so I guess I'm talking to, like, if you're in your 30s or if you're in your 40s even, like, however old you are, there's no rush. I mean, we got a long time. If you're 40, you're not. You got 40 years left at least, you know? Like, you got quite a bit of time left on this earth. Don't rush it. Like, stay planted, stay focused on what you know you should be doing, and God will bring them sooner or later in his timing. So don't rush. Secondly, though, is just focus on yourself. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
When I went to this church that she was going to and went to play, I wasn't like, oh, let me find a wife here. Or let me find, like, I just wanted to meet people that were around my age that loved God, like I loved God, and people that were cool to be around, hang out with, that weren't worldly, toxic, all that junk. And so, like, when I said, oh, I thought she's the finest girl, blah, blah, I did, but I wasn't like, you know, I gotta get with her, I gotta make her wife. I wasn't like that. I was just like, we hung out for a month and a half with just all our friends. Like, I would flirt with her, but like, it wasn't like ever
that
like
didn't become your priority.
No, my priority was to what I went there and sought out to do, which was to, you know, use the gift that God gave me and meet like-minded people my age that love God, and which is what I did. This came out of it, which is obviously great, but like, that wasn't the main focus at the time of my life. So focus on you, do what you're supposed to do, and in that you might find who you're supposed to be with without even realizing it, because that's kind of how it happened for us. So those are my two things.
That is good. Yeah, I think for ladies, I would just say, like, know that being single doesn't mean that you're alone. Being single, like, take advantage of the time that you have, that you can build your relationship with God, and the time that you can work on yourself to prepare yourself to be a wife. Take the time to grow in yourself so that you can be better for when that person comes, but also for yourself and for your family and for the relationships that you already have around you. and just to level up and just not be so stagnant on guys and what they think of you, or like going and pursuing guys that don't have the right mindset. And I think every season that you're in matters too. Where you are, what you're doing. For me, being in that season of going to that church was like good for me, because that church was a good starter church, and it was good for me building relationships and just communicating and having a community of people around me, and that was awesome. And then through that I met you, and like vice versa. I know you've told me like that church for him was a blessing in disguise because he met me there. So yeah, I think that everything happens for a reason. I think that every person that you meet is there to teach you something, or for you to teach them something. So what you've gone through already is for a purpose, and where you are at and where you are going to be is for a purpose. So just be patient, and he'll come and find you. How would you say a man needs to act in a relationship? Like, what should he be doing for their relationship and bringing to the table?
Well, first of all, this is, I don't know if some non-Christians are going to be watching this, but as a man, you should pay for every date you go on. I don't care if you've been dating for a year. Like, she would offer to pay for stuff, and I'd be like, no. And sometimes she would just put her card in the waiter's hand or waitress's hand, and like, she would pay, but like, she should not pay for anything. You should open the door for her. Simple stuff. Be a gentleman, obviously. Buy her flowers, you know, all that good stuff. But what a Christian man should do is, you should never want her to love you more than she loves God. I want Alyssa to love me and cherish me and think I'm the greatest guy in the world, and I know she does, but like, her relationship with God should always be stronger than her relationship with me, because if her relationship with me is stronger than it is with God, we're gonna fall. Or vice versa. If my relationship here is not as good as the one here, this relationship will never be what God set out to be, because he's not at the center of it. So keep her centered, keep her grounded, but keep your relationship with God good. Make sure her relationship, check in on her. Again, don't baby her in her walk, but make sure these relationships are good. That way this relationship can be good.
Yeah. And
secondary would be an example. Even if she's a little further in her walk for you, you're the man. You should be the example of how you treat people, how you talk to people, how you worship, how you serve your local church. Everything you do as a man, and as a Christian man especially, she's following you. So if your walk is like this, and you're not serving the local church how you're supposed to be serving, you're not treating people how they're supposed to be treated, and you're just an ugly person, how do you think she's going to turn out a year from now? You know, like, you have your own personality, but you've picked up traits of mine, and I've picked up traits of yours after we've been married for almost 2 years. Again, without even realizing, and they're not bad traits, because we're not bad people. But if I start walking like this, she's falling behind me, she could start walking like this, and then you won't have any legs to stand on. Mm-hmm. So I would say lead by example, lead well, and love well. That would be my advice.
That's good. That was really good.
Thank you.
So one thing I've always heard that I thought was cool, and I did all the time when we got in a relationship, which you probably don't even know this, is read 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 with your spouse's name in it, and then also reread it with your name in it. So like this would sound like 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 is, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs, love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with truth, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. So if I were to read it with Tyler, it'd be like, Tyler is patient, Tyler is kind, Tyler does not envy, does not boast. So that is something that I always heard, like, read that with your spouse's name, but also go back in and Alyssa is patient, Alyssa is kind, Alyssa does not envy, and see what you need to fix. And what is not true about what you're reading, go and fix it, because you want to align to God's word as much as you can. And I think another huge thing that worked for us is I am very standoffish sometimes, and I'm in my own head, and I just like get quiet, and sometimes he needs to be reassured of like, oh, hey, like I love you. Like he tells me constantly, and sometimes I like think I tell him enough, but it's not enough, and I don't know how to show my love sometimes. And I think the biggest thing that has helped me with that is just praying, Jesus, show me how you love me so that I am able to love him and I'm able to be a better wife for him. And I think that is a huge thing that relationships can do well on, is if they know how to love properly and they know how much Jesus loves them, so that they can love their spouse, and so that we can also take accountability in what we are lacking in, so that our relationship can grow stronger. So try that with 1 Corinthians 13.
And I know it sounds cheesy, but figure out what your person's love language is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like, that's such a cliche, cheesy thing, but it'll help a lot.
It matters.
It'll help a
Yeah,
lot.
it matters. So you know y'all are on the same page, it's out in the open. And I think just like communication, having a good communication, he's always asking me and always doing checkups on like, hey, how am I doing? How are you? What can I work on? What can I work on? And we get vulnerable, and it works because we're not just waiting and building up all this anger just to blow up on one another, or we're not just waiting for him to do something that makes me mad again, and then I'm like, you do this, like address it when it happens. And I think that is a good way to keep everything steady.
Because I'd rather have a tough conversation for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
3 days out of the week, with something I need to do better on, or with something that she needs to do better on, than have a 45-minute argument once a month with all this stuff from the previous weeks and months that she doesn't like that I did, or whatever it may be. Don't let stuff build up. If they're not doing something you think they should be doing, or they did something that hurt you or made you upset, tell them. Like, you'll spend 5 or 10 minutes fixing it and talking about it and praying about it, rather than an hour in a month from all this stuff. Like, because she's made me upset. I'm sure I made her upset. I've done stuff that she was like, why would he do that? But talk about it. I think that's again, that kind of sounds cliche, but like, it's easier said than done.
Right.
Like, you don't want to be the person to have to bring the bad stuff up, but like,
Yeah.
it'll further both of you. In an hour after that little conversation, you'll forget about it and everything will be fine. But if you're arguing for an hour because you let everything build up, you're going to be pissed off. Can I say that?
Yes.
No, I didn't know, but you're going to be really pissed off for like a week after that, or for 3 days. Just don't. Life's too short to be miserable, so don't let stuff build up. Sorry, I went on that tangent.
No, that's true.
It helped us a ton.
I think also is people will let things build up and they won't spill it to their spouse, but they'll spill it to their friends or their family,
or their mom
and that's not healthy, because I love him and I can forgive him and I can complain about him, but I'll forgive him because I love him.
Everyone else might not.
But they don't love him like I love him.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to hold on to what you tell them. They're going to hold on. They're going to have these things in the back of their mind of this person, and they don't understand your love for that person, so they're not going to forgive them like you forgive them.
That's one of the things your dad told me.
Yeah.
The day I asked him, he was like, I don't care how many arguments y'all have, like, because you love each other, but he's like, don't go and tell all your boys, oh, she pissed me off because she did this, or blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Because number one, that's just low. That's not right to do. But everything that we, have overcome, and all the stuff we've learned from just the short 2 years almost that we've been married now, is what happens in this household stays in this household.
Yes.
Like, I don't go and tell my parents when we're in a fight or we're in an argument, which we don't fight, but like, when something is not right between us, I don't go and tell my parents or my friends, and I know she doesn't, because it's just, again, they don't love her, and her friends and family don't love me like she does, and vice versa. It's hard to ever forget that,
right? So these are just some things that worked for us in our relationship, and so we're just giving some advice out there. And
we're not marriage counselors, so
no.
This might have worked for us, but it might not work for you, or it might work for you. Who knows? But I think the biggest thing is, like, put God at the center. That will always work.
Exactly.
That will, out of everything we've said, if both people's relationship with God is good and God's at the center of the relationship, that will always work. So
yes, always stay true to yourself and who you are individually and your relationship with God individually, and then together as well, have y'all's relationship with God. But don't just keep this in relationship with God, but also on your own time. But I hope that this resonated with someone and just helped you, whether you're in your singleness season or in relation. Tyler here dropped some music on all streaming platforms. Tell them about it.
All right, where do I start? I guess I'll start with the name of it. It's a 7-song project called Jesus Saves, and I'll keep this very short, but almost a year ago this month, April 20th, 2023, I had a surgery to take my tonsils and adenoids out and do some reconstruction of my mouth and throat. I know that sounds like really crazy. It was really crazy. I had never had a surgery before. I had never been in the hospital except like since I was a baby and like born. So it was really scary. May 3rd, so the surgery was April 20th. May 3rd, going into May 4th, in the middle of the night, I was actually working on a song that I had recorded before the surgery, because I can't sit still. Like even right now, I'm like moving around and shaking and stuff. I just can't sit still, but I'm like that in life. I was like, you know what? I can't sing. Let me work on this song that I sang on before the surgery. Let me mix it and master it. That way it'll be ready to be out in a few weeks, whatever. So I was in the studio and I started bleeding out from my mouth, and I had like seen some specks of blood and a little bit of blood, like just that, like I had coughed some up in the weeks prior, but it wasn't a big deal. It all stopped quickly. It was all good. So this one started out the same way, and I went to the sink and just kind of let it like fall out of my mouth, and Alyssa was with me, and I was like, yeah, it'll stop. Like this is how the other one started too. I was very nonchalant about it, and then 10 minutes go by, it started coming out a little bit quicker, but I didn't. Also, this is like very graphic talk that's about to happen, so sorry. Skip to the end, I guess, maybe, if you're not want to hear the story, but you know, it was happening a little bit quicker, and it had been 10 minutes, and all the other ones that had happened had stopped like in 5 minutes. So I was still very nonchalant. She was getting a little on edge, so I was like, hey, like let me just sit down. I'm getting a little lightheaded, so I got a red Solo cup and was just kind of putting the blood in there and spitting the blood out. And then it started coming out a little bit quicker, and I started like coughing it up pretty violently. And so within a matter of 5 minutes of sitting in my recliner, I ended up filling the red cup up, and I was feeling really lightheaded, and she started to freak out a little bit more. So I was like, hey, you know, it's not a big deal. I was like, can you just take me to the bathroom? Because I was worried about my house. I was like, I don't want to get blood all over this tile. It's not going to come out. Like, I'm very nonchalant, not panicking at all. So the whole time this is happening, she was like, let me call your grandma, like she lives close to us. I was like, no, don't call her. I'm not going to the hospital. I'll be fine right here. It's going to stop. And then I was praying. She's like, I'm going to call your grandma. She said that 4 or 5 times, like, don't call her. Don't bother anyone. I was like, I'll be fine. Like, and so then I told her, go back to the living room, just sit in there, pray for me. I'll be fine. Because when I looked at her, she was as white as this wall, and she was like super pale, and I could tell her hands were shaking. I could tell she was freaked out. So I was like, hey, it's not a big deal. I don't want you to pass out. I want you to be okay. I was like, just go sit in the living room, pray for me, I'll be fine. So she comes in the living room, and she ends up calling my grandma, like I didn't want her to, and my grandma comes in the house. And when I saw her face, I was like, okay, it's probably more serious than I'm treating it, because she hadn't seen me yet. So she looked freaked out instantly, white, ghost looking too. So I was like, okay.
Use wisdom. That's what he was lacking. He was being stubborn. So I had to use wisdom, and I was going to call her anyways. And I'm glad I did, because I could not drive him. Because I was about to pass out.
So my grandma came and picked me up, and her, Alyssa, and I went to the hospital. And the lady, I couldn't talk, and I have blood. I look like I just murdered someone. I look crazy. she's like, my husband had tonsillitis, he's bleeding out. She said, all right. She's like, well, can I get y'all's insurance and ID? And I had a bag full of blood from the car ride that I had puked up.
Literally a gallon size Ziploc bag half full of blood.
I just flung.
And the hospital's like 4 minutes away from us.
I just flung myself over the counter to the lady and just held up this bag of blood. And she was like, oh, we'll see you right away. And then she like pushed a button and a door opened, like they got us back really. But she was trying to get my insurance and ID. I didn't have any time for that. Anyways, I ended up passing out and seizing up shortly, probably 5 or 10 minutes after I got to the hospital because I had just lost so much blood. And I finally come to and wake up, and my hearing is the first thing that comes back. Like I trying to open my eyes, but I can't open them. And I hear beeping. I hear people like frantically talking very loudly, and it's like I can hear a group of people around me.
At this point, he was admitted as a trauma patient. So they were, my perspective, because he was unconscious, was him just passing out, seizing up. They were trying to poke his blood, and obviously he just bled out a ton, like it was not working. But he like wakes up, projectile vomits blood, passes out again, seizing up. So they like rush into the back. It's literally like an episode of Grey's Anatomy. Me and your grandma are like walking with the doctor, like pacing back to where you're going, and he's just asking a bunch of questions. And they like are calling different nurses and different doctors from every level of the hospital. No one knows what to do. And so so
my hearing is the first thing that comes back. I hear all these people around me, and I'm trying to open my eyes. I can't move. And so finally my eyesight and vision, I can instantly just open my eyes. So in my head, I didn't know what was happening. I was freaked out, but I heard all these people yelling and talking about surgeries and like sedation and intubation. So I'm freaked out. I don't know where I'm at. I don't remember any of the last 30 minutes. So I just shoot up out of the hospital bed, and they had cut my shirt off and they were cutting my pants off. And then like the lead doctor that was in charge of, me and all the stuff that had just happened, he just takes both hands and just shoves me back in the bed, and he's like, calm down. And he was like, do you know where you're at? And I was like, no. And he's like, you're at the hospital, this happened. And so instantly, like I'm still bleeding out, I'm freaked out. He was like, we need to intubate you until you're stable enough for surgery, or so we can get you stable for surgery. And yeah, I guess you have to have permission. He's like, do we have your permission? And I was like, no. And he was like, do you know what we're trying to do? And I was like, I know what you're trying to do. I was like, I'm the type of guy, I don't want to be a vegetable for a day or two in there, having all the machines and all this stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just for me personally, I'm 20 years old. At the time I was 19. I'm a strong guy. Like, I want to be able to fight this on my own, or nothing at all. Like, I'm gonna conquer this on my own. I don't need to be intubated so y'all can reoperate. Like, I am gonna pray and this bleeding's gonna stop. And so I instantly just I can't really talk much, but I instantly just start like muttering, Jesus save me. I didn't pray a prayer. I didn't nothing. I just said, Jesus save me 3 times. And on the 3rd time, I finally got the full phrase out clearly, and the bleeding instantly stopped. The reason that I think God saved me from that, obviously I still have purpose and a calling and a plan that he has for my life, but because my faith was at the level it needed to be at. So that's what had happened. But the reason I even started saying that, and I couldn't talk much, but through the curtain I saw her and the hospital chaplain. That's how bad it was. They sent the chaplain to comfort my wife as I was dying, basically. That's what they thought. They thought I was gone and wasn't going to make it.
And also what he had gone through was 1%.
So when you have a tonsillectomy, adenoidectomy, again, science podcast for like the next 10 seconds, they say that your risk of hemorrhaging and bleeding out the first 2 weeks is really high. Like, not crazy high, but it's decently high, and this is what to do if it happens. So the doctors had told us all that. But after I made it through, I asked the doctor, what's the percentage of that happening this long after the surgery? Because it had been 2 weeks exactly. And he was like, at 14 days, the risk drops to under 1%. And I was on my 14th day. So he was like, the fact that this happened to you is crazy, but he was like, it's a miracle you're still here.
Right.
So I didn't know what to name the project. I knew I wanted to do a Christian project, but that's what made me want to do it and know I needed to do it as my first project this year, because I was like, after everything I went through last year, I believe my story and the voice that I have, not my actual voice, but like the voice that I have on social media and in front of people and the connection that I have, I was like, these people need to hear this. I was like, God didn't do it just for me to keep it to myself and for my family. He did this for me to share it with the world. So I didn't know what to call the project, but I didn't think of anything else better than Jesus Saves, because that's the exact statement and phrase I said while I was dying at the hospital and God saved me. So he really does save, and even if it's not a medical thing, if it's an addiction you're fighting or battling, or it's something in your mind, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, he can and will save you, and all you have to do is have the faith and believe in him. So go check it out.
Yes.
It's on all streaming platforms.
Awesome.
Whatever you use, it's on there. And if it's not on one that you use, hit me up. I'll get it on there just for you, because I want everyone to hear this.
So, thanks for joining my podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Real.
It's an honor. Can you put my Instagram right here?
Yeah.
It's at Tyler Fender, TYLERFENDERR.
Go follow him. Go check out his music. Thanks for watching, and I will see y'all next month.